ongoing cancer treatment crisis on the Gauteng province has once again come under the spotlight. This is civil society groups, opposition parties and patients demand urgent action from provincial government. Despite two High Court rulings ordering the Gauteng Department of Health to clear the backlog in radiation oncology at hospitals such as Steve Biko Academic Hospital, there are still major concerns about compliance, accountability, and the human toll of administrative inaction. In August, the Gauteng High Court reaffirmed that the province's failure to provide timely radiation therapy to cancer patients violated their constitutional right to life, dignity, and access to health care. Well, I'm joined now by Salome, Meyer, Director at Cancer Alliance. Salome, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming through. From the statement from civil society and yourselves, it seems there are three areas that are keeping this process in limbo. One, court orders or inadherence to court orders. Two, bureaucratic inertia. And three, general system that is struggling under the weight of what it needs to deliver. Let's start with the court orders. I mean, there are two of them already. Are they just being flatly ignored?
Well, in fact, what is happening is that we were in court again on the 7th of October as the Gauteng Health Department, in fact, appealed the last court order, and that was the March court order. So we're still awaiting a full bench to deliver their judgment with regards to the court orders of the previous two judgments. So that's where we are in essence. And what we also know is that the Gauteng Health Department have already filed their case in the Supreme Court of Appeal. So they're taking actually this further, and they've handed in their heads of argument, and our heads of argument have to be submitted by Monday, 24 November. And that's literally where we stand with the case. So yes, whilst we understand that the Gauteng Health Department has in fact started with the treatment of cancer patients, and I think it is important for listeners to understand that the specific problem that we are concerned about is Charlotte Mdluli Hospital. That is where that original backlog stemmed from. And the current situation at that hospital has not been resolved. So the court order literally demands that the Gauteng Health Department updates the backlog list that was provided to them in 2022, and that then compare apples with apples, which of those patients still require treatment, which of those patients have been treated, which of those patients would never have had or responded to treatment any longer because of the delay, and how many patients have subsequently possibly have died from the cancer. And that would have given us, or that would give us, the true impact of this ineptness.
So those are the two areas of the court orders that must be complied with. Is the Gauteng government challenging that in their appeal order?
The Gauteng, they are challenging the fact that the backlog list is indeed valid. According to them, we obtained the backlog list or the information illegally, and that is the main basis of their case. Instead of going in and actually saying, wait a bit, the backlog list actually existed, yes, it was compiled, and here is the list. And we understand that they, according to them, that they have updated the backlog list, but they just don't want to give it to us to compare. So we do not know what is the actual situation that is currently happening. What we do know is that the money that was allocated to the Gauteng Health Department for the management of this crisis, that they have appointed service providers in the private sector to in fact provide treatment to patients. But we do not know whether those patients are patients that are on the current waiting list or are they patients from the backlog list. And there's no ways that you can actually determine that without comparing apples to apples.
So why is this list important to you? I mean, my current understanding is that you have a backlog list. They are saying your backlog list is invalid. In fact, they've got their backlog list, but they are not showing you their backlog list because they've got private sector that's dealing with that. And in fact, they've updated it. Why is it important for you that you have this list?
It is important from a human rights perspective to understand which patients actually have been managed and which patients have never been managed. We are aware of patients that in fact have never had treatment and that still haven't had treatment, despite the fact that Gauteng Health Department have indicated they've cleared the backlog list. So it's a matter of trust as well. How can we trust the department for saying you have cleared the backlog list if we know that there are patients that have not had treatment?
So as far as you know, I mean, in the statement, they're saying, you yourself are saying, the situation has not changed since 2021. So as far as you are getting a picture of the information that you have at hand, nothing has changed since 2021 as far as that list is concerned.
The situation that has not changed at Charlotte Mdluli Hospital is the fact that there are still a lack of equipment at that hospital. There's 2 linacs that have been on tender since 2021, November 2021. And then that department at Charlotte Mdluli Hospital is running at half the staff that they actually need to provide treatment. And that is part of the reason why the services had to be outsourced, because they haven't got enough equipment and enough staff. So that situation has not changed.
Right.
So that's also part of the reason why we're asking, what is the actual truth about, with regards to the backlog list in terms of the patients that you say have been treated?
Are you saying?
We're not saying that you have not treated patients.
Right.
That's not what we are saying.
The situation at Charlotte Mdluli, you're saying, as far as procurement of equipment is concerned, hasn't changed. Is that because of red tape? Is that what you're referring to as bureaucratic inertia in terms of how monies should be spent to be able to get that equipment?
Totally. It's been a backwards and forwards, between the procurement division, as well as what are the machines that is required to be procured. And let us also just share again this with the public, that in 2022, there was an allocation for linac machines, specifically for Charlotte Mdluli Hospital. At the time, the CEO of that hospital indicated, I don't need equipment. I have enough. That is despite the fact that since 2018, her cobalt machines were decommissioned and she had 2 empty bunkers, and she knew that there was equipment required to fill those bunkers. The allocation then went to Chris Hani Hospital and George Makuri Hospital. Those machines procured under the National Treasury Tertiary Services Grant is still standing in storage. So it's been in storage since 2022. At some stage, there was a thought that the machines can be installed in those 2 bunkers, but unfortunately they cannot because they're too big. The cobalt machines in essence are smaller than the current Linux, so you need very specific Linux machines to go into those bunkers. So those machines are still in storage. Then what is even worse is they then realized, wait a bit, we haven't got money or bunkers for those machines that have been procured. The procurement of those bunkers only happened in 2022, and the construction of those bunkers only commenced in 2025. It means then that the commissioning of that equipment and those bunkers at Chris Hani, George Makuri will only come online in 2026, and that will alleviate the problems also of Charlotte Mdluli as well as Steve Biko. However, to come back is now Charlotte Mdluli is still sitting with 2 empty bunkers, and the procurement of the tender for the 2 Linux have still not been finalized because they're vacillating between 1, 2, what should we do, and that's what's happening.
And you're saying, I mean, that kind of bureaucratic red tape that is going on there, if you take the fact that that equipment is in storage and you would compare that with the waiting list, it would give you a story that at least correlates. That makes sense to say these people are waiting for, I think, for over 3 months. Is that the target? It shouldn't actually exceed more than 3 months, but these ones are waiting more than 3 months, and it's because of the slow pace of bringing this equipment on board.
Absolutely, and how can you also say that you're dealing with your current waiting list if you still haven't got enough equipment in your hospital and enough staff? So these are the kind of issues that is just not 1 and 1 is not making 2 here. And that's what we are saying the whole time. You are also working on half staff. And I think that is the other issue that needs to be highlighted to the public. Since 2010, the Occupational Services Dispensation pointed out that radiation therapists, their salaries needs to be lifted out. And at the moment, what we are finding is that the radiation therapists at Charlotte Mdluli is receiving a lower salary than their other colleagues in other provinces. Other provinces manage to sort out the occupational service dispensation many years ago. And again, we're sitting with a CEO that was not actually able to solve this problem. And now we are talking about the bargaining chamber that actually now has to solve this problem.
All right, Salome, much appreciated. Thanks so much for coming on. That's Salome Meyer, Director at Cancer Alliance. They're raising concerns, particularly around the backlogs in treatment of cancer and transparency, making the backlog list public, which the Department of Health in Gauteng has not managed to do.